Hello, today's daily reading comes from the Apocrypha. We are reading from the book of 3rd Maccabees, chapter 3, and reads as follows. On discovering this, so incensed was the wicked king that he no longer confined his rage to the Jews in Alexandria, laying his hand more heavily upon those who lived in the country. He gave orders that they should be quickly collected into one place and most cruelly deprived of their lives. While this was going on, an invidious rumor was uttered abroad by men who had band together to injure the Jewish race. The purport of their charge was that the Jews kept them away from the ordinance of the law. Now, while the Jews almost maintained a feeling of unwavering loyalty toward the kings, yet as they worshiped God and observed his law, they made certain distinctions and avoided certain things. Hence, some persons held them in revulsion, although as they adorned their conversation with works of righteousness, they had established themselves in the good opinion of the world. What all the rest of mankind said was, however, made of no account by the foreigners, who said much of the exclusiveness of the Jews with regard to their worship and meats. They alleged that they were men unsociable, hostile to the king's interests, refusing to associate with him or his troops. By this way of speaking, they brought much odium upon them. Nor was this unexpected uproar and sudden conflux of people unobserved by the Greeks who lived in the city, concerning men who had never harmed them. Yet to aid them was not in their power, since all was oppression around. But they encouraged them in their troubles and expected a favorable turn of affairs. He who knows all things will not, said they, disregard so great a people. Some of the neighbors, friends, and fellow dealers of the Jews even called them secretly to an interview, pledged them their assistance, and promised to do their very utmost for them. Now the king, elated with his prosperous fortune and not regarding the superior power of God, but thinking to preserve in his present purpose, wrote the following letter to the prejudice of the Jews. King Ptolemy Philopater, to the commanders and soldiers in Egypt and in all places, health and happiness. I am right well, and so too are my affairs. Since our Asiatic campaign, the particulars of which you know, and which by the aid of the gods, not lightly given and by our own vigor, have been brought to a successful issue according to our expectation. We resolve not with strength of spear, but with gentleness and much humanity, as it were to nurse the inhabitants of Cole, Syria, and Phoenicia, and to be their willing benefactor. So, having bestowed considerable sums of money upon the temples of the several cities, we proceeded even as far as Jerusalem, and went up to honor the temple of these wretched beings who never cease from their folly. To outward appearance, they received us willingly, but belied that appearance by their deeds. When we were eager to enter their temple and to honor it with most beautiful and exquisite gifts, they were so carried away by their own arrogance as to forbid us the entrance, while we, out of our own forbearance toward all men, refrained from exercising our power upon them. And so, exhibiting their enemy against us, they alone among the nations lift up their heads against kings and benefactors, as men unwilling to submit to anything reasonable. We then, having endeavored to make allowance for the madness of those persons, and on our victorious return, treating all people in Egypt courteously, acted in a manner which was befitting, accordingly bearing no ill will against their kinsmen at Jerusalem, but rather remembering our connection with them and the numerous matters with sincere heart from a remote period entrusted to them, we wish to venture a total alteration of their estate by giving them the rights of citizens of Alexandria and to admit them to the everlasting rights of our Solomonites. All this, however, they have taken in a very different spirit. With their innate malignity, they have spurned the fair offer, and constantly inclining to evil, have rejected the inestimable rights. Not only so, but by using speech and by refraining from speech, they abhor the few among them who are heartily disposed toward us, ever deeming that their ignoble course of procedure will force us to do away with our reform. Having then received certain proofs that the Jews bear us every sort of ill will, we must look forward to the possibility of some sudden tumult among ourselves, when these impious men may turn traitors and barbarous enemies. As soon, therefore, as the contents of this letter become known to you, in that same hour we order those Jews who dwell among you, with wives and children to be sent out to us, vilified and abused in chains of iron to undergo a death, cruel and ignominious, suitable of men disaffected. For by the punishment of them in one body we perceive that we have found the only means of establishing our affairs for the future on a firm and satisfactory basis. Whosoever will shield the Jew, whether it be old man, child, or nursing baby, will with his whole house be tortured to death. Whoever will inform against the Jews, besides receiving the property of the person charged, will be presented with 2,000 drachmas from the royal treasury, will be made free, and will be crowned. Whatever place will shelter a Jew will, when he is hunted out, be put under the ban of fire and be forever rendered useless to every living being for all the time to come. Such was the purport of the king's letter. Amen.